All right, guys, this is going to be great. I am so excited and honored to say that my guest today is Rachel Rodgers. Now, you probably already know, but Rachel is the founder of Hello 7, a multi-million dollar company that teaches women how to earn more money and build true wealth. Now, Rodgers is truly walking out a big dream, and that is to teach women, especially women of color, how to end the cycle of overworking, under earning, and financial stress once and for all. Now, she's the creator and host of the wildly successful Hello 7 podcast and her brand new book, people. It was just released and it has been an instant bestseller. This thing is killing it, and it should be. One of the reasons why is it's got one of the best titles ever. The title is We Should All Be Millionaires, a women's guide to earning more, building wealth, and gaining economic power. Now, Rodgers has been featured in Time, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Fast Company, just to name a few. And most importantly, she resides in North Carolina with her husband and 4 kiddos on, get this, lean in, people, a 53-acre ranch. Now, how awesome is that? Talk about a big dream. She is truly living the dream, think, do life, and I can't wait to dive into her story and do this thing. So let's do it. Rachel, welcome to Dream, Think, Do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
Thank you for that fabulous intro. Can you just introduce me everywhere?
I tell you what, it's important. Yeah, exactly right. You bet. I'll be out there. I'll be at the ranch this afternoon. So I love it. Well, I told you before we hit record, I am so glad our conversation is going to be 4 hours long, because there's so much that you cover in the book that is so important to a Dream, Think, Do audience. Like, you are really inspiring people to dream bigger, think better, and do more of what they were put on the planet to do, starting with your very first sentence. And that's, I always love, like, what's that first sentence going to be? And I know as a writer, there's so much pressure.
It's an existential crisis over what the first sentence is.
What is the first sentence? But Dream, Think, Doers are going to read this to you because it is so powerful. And I always love it's bold when somebody says, this is who the book is for, this is who it's not. And you, like, it's a punch in the gut, a kick in the shin, and hell yes, raised in the air. So listen to this, guys. I believe every woman should want to be a millionaire. If you agree with me, then this book is for you. If you strongly disagree with me, then this book is definitely for you, which I think is awesome. And I agree with you, but tell me about that. Why was that so important? And what's the wrestling match?
Yeah. Well, I think especially as women, right, we need to turn towards our money and really look at our earning potential. I think we're not living up to our full potential.
Yep.
And it's because of all the things I talk about in the book, the societal messages we get, the fact that we couldn't even have credit cards without a cosigner until the 70s, right? Like, that's my mother, my grandmother, right? So that's very recent. And so I think we really need to be focusing on, if we care about women's issues and we want to solve these things, especially at a political and societal level, then we have to use money as a powerful tool. And so if we have greater earning potential, we should be tapping into that so that we can use that tool to improve our own lives and make the world a better place.
And those around us. Absolutely. It's so powerful. And I think one thing is, it's interesting to learn from somebody who grew up wealthy, right? It's a little bit like, I always joke, but it's true. Like, if I want to lose weight, I don't want to try to lose or learn from somebody that's always been 2% body fat. Like, whatever, you know what I mean? Forget it. I want to learn from somebody who's been fluffy and now they're in good shape, right? Like, and I love that you're so honest and real in the book about, you did not grow up a millionaire lifestyle. Like, you grew up very different than that. Tell us a little bit about that. And I also wanted to get into your head a little more of, like, how did you shake that off? Because, like we talked about before I hit record, so often, when we talk about dream, think, do, and dreaming bigger, so often we kind of dream in relationship to what our parents dreamed or didn't dream, or what our family or our close friends dream. And it's hard to break away from difficult patterns, right? So tell us a little bit about what, kind of what you grew up in and how you broke free and wanted to do something different.
Yeah. Well, it's such a good question. So I grew up low income. My parents, there was a time period where they had good jobs and we got a condo, and that didn't last very long. They both got laid off at the exact same time. And so we wound up back in a much worse, financial situation. And so, we were on food stamps. We had the lights go out on a regular basis. Like, it was a lot of financial struggle. And so that's what I grew up with. But I did have examples of people who had money. And the people who had money, like, to be totally honest, were drug dealers in my neighborhood. They had money.
Yep.
And so I was watching them and had like sort of an up close like education of like, what were they doing with their money? And they were like older brothers of my friends and cousins and things like that. So it's like, I got to see what they were doing with money. And then, you know, I used to babysit a little girl and her parents had money. And so I got to see like up close how they lived. And so I did have some examples of money around me and realized that like, oh, not everybody is financially struggling.
Right.
And I had good friends growing up that were, you know, pretty solidly middle class. It was clear that they did not have the financial distress that I had in my household.
Yeah.
And so seeing those things and realizing like, oh, we live this way. And then I'm biracial. So my mom is white, my dad is black. And so, you know, I would go to the black side of the family's house and, you know, it'd be barbecues and like all this joy and fun or whatever. But it was like making something out of nothing. Like, you know,
absolutely.
And then I would go to my mom's side of the family and her, you know, my aunts and cousin over there were like more middle class. And so we'd go over there and it'd be like Neil Diamond playing and we'd be having shrimp cocktail and it was much more quiet.
Coming to America.
Yes, exactly. And we'd like sit down for proper meals and like actually learn how to cut our food.
That's hilarious.
So, but seeing the difference between, you know, the white side of my family and their lifestyle versus the black side of my family. And there was like joy and lessons to be learned on both sides, but there was a huge financial difference.
Yeah.
And so just seeing that dichotomy, I think really helped me to see like, okay, if I have an option, I want to choose that.
Right.
And my parents, they didn't have money, but they definitely always made me believe I could be anything. Like whatever crazy ideas I had, they would entertain them, you know? And I think that made a huge difference where I believed I could be whatever. Like I believed them that I could be whatever I wanted. And so for me, it was like, I wanted to be a lawyer because I knew that lawyers made money. Lawyers stood up for the little people, you know, lawyers were like, you know, yelling in the courtroom, like standing up to the big guy. And like that whole visual, I really liked it. I related to it. And so I was like, that's kind of the vision that I had. And so that's what I did.
I love it. And I think that what I love about that is that, you know, it speaks to anyone can look around for examples, right? And like you saw examples of what you didn't want. You saw examples of what you did want. And that was both on the economic kind of like on all sides of the economic stratus. I mean, you could see wealthy people where you're like, well, yeah, I don't want to make my money that way. But to be able to say, oh, I might actually want to experience that kind of wealth. I do want to experience that kind of wealth. How does that happen? Like that, to break that down, I think is so huge. And I think that's something we all need to remember is we are seeing examples every day. We need to be intentional about which examples do we want to aspire to, which do we want to plant seeds within us that we want to grow. Right. So I think that's huge, but then to also realize like, what do you want? And I love how your first kind of career step was to become an attorney, because that obviously was a part of who you were. You wanted to represent people. You wanted to, you know, stand up for that little person, help them to see something break through. And obviously being an attorney was one way to do that. But that's one of my questions too for you is that I think oftentimes when somebody makes a big investment, like getting a law degree, both, you know, the investment of time, investment of money, they then kind of have that sunk cost fallacy of I've got to stay doing this, right? I invested this time, I invested this money. This is the only thing that I'll get to do with my life. But you were an attorney, you had success with that, but now you're doing something very different. Talk to me about you giving yourself permission to make a change, even, you know, in that career trajectory after making an investment of time and money on something like that to say, you know what, I'm going to make that change. Cause I know with a lot of dream think doers, they're thinking about making a change, but there's that residue of, but I spent this time or I spent this money. Talk to me about that decision.
Yeah.
How you did it.
For sure. I agree. I think that's, it's often hard for us to make shifts like that in our careers. We're like, well, everyone praises me for being a lawyer. Like people are impressed when I say I'm an attorney, right? So like, you know, now I say business coach, people are like, what's that? You know, is that even a thing?
Exactly. You're adorable. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, one of my friends was like this powerhouse realtor and she became a life coach and everybody was like, what is a life coach? You know, they were not impressed. However, she has a multi-million-dollar life coaching business now, you know? So I think that there's we have to follow that inkling. So I actually was trying to get out of law before I even graduated law school. I have to tell you, it was a traumatizing experience.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, it was not easy getting through law school. And I think it's where I chose to go and just wherever I was at in life at the moment. I found the environment very challenging. It's very competitive, very ego driven. There were very few people of color. There was not a lot of women, so it was just an interesting environment. But when I was in my last year of school, I read the 4-Hour Work Week, as you do, right? As everybody did during that time.
Absolutely. Best title ever. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was like, well, what could I come up with? And so I had this idea about a t-shirt company, and I got the t-shirts made. I had the logos made. I did all of these things to see, like, could I actually make enough money to like pay myself a salary and pay off my student loans with t-shirts, and learned quickly, no, I cannot.
That's right. Good experiments, learned a lot. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
I think somebody else could turn a t-shirt company into an empire, but my idea wasn't going to do it. And I didn't have the skills. So then I was like, well, what do I have? I have legal skills. I've passed the bar. I can, become a solo lawyer. Right. Yeah. And so then I deep dove into that and researched that and started learning from all the people and, created a practice. And then 7 years into running my 5 to 7 years in that sort of range, my clients were entrepreneurs because I did intellectual property law, business law. And so my clients would start coming to me and saying, like, you're making more money than me. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm making more money than you? Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That. Check. Yeah.
So then, they would say like, hey, how are you marketing yourself? What are you doing? And so I would tell them. And then eventually a friend of mine was like, you should probably charge for that business advice that you're giving out.
I love that.
Like, okay. So then, it's like I would charge for the legal advice and give the business advice for free. And then eventually I basically just switched it. And I took on my first, and I dabbled. And this is what I encourage people to do. Yep. If you were considering a career transition, dabble, try it, make it a side hustle. You don't have to risk the farm, right? Like I had kids. I was the sole breadwinner of my household. I could not just be like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to do this over here.
Like, exactly. Today I'm going to change. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No option there. Like I got bills to pay and, mouths to feed.
Right. Exactly. So, literally. Yes.
Literally. So what I did was I just took on a client and was like, I'm going to just get my first client for business coaching. And it was like a friend of a friend. And I coached her, and her business grew immensely, and she was so happy, and she was so happy with the results. So she told everybody, and then other people started coming to me. And so then I started to put together coaching offers, and that was all she wrote. And then, I transitioned for like a 2-year period of doing like business coaching was the side hustle and the law was the main business. And then eventually they sort of swapped. And then eventually the legal work fell away, and I was just 100% into business coaching.
I love that. We are such a big fan of experimenting, right? Like, just like you're saying, I think so many people think, oh, in order to take a step towards a dream, I've got to quit everything and make these huge shifts. It's like, no, what could you do with 15 minutes a day? What could you do with 30 minutes a day?
Yes.
How about a side hustle for a while before you're dependent on it for income? So I love that. We could go and talk for hours just on that alone, but I want to come back to, the title again, Tim Ferriss, good title, 4-Hour Work Week. Yours, We Should All Be Millionaires. I have title envy. I saw that. I'm like, come on, best title ever.
My publisher tried to talk me out of it. What? And I think this is a lesson about good ideas, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't let people talk you out of your ideas. Because I think people are like, well, I don't know if that'll sell, and I don't know how that'll play. And it's like, it's controversial. And I'm like, that's the point.
Exactly.
That's why That's why it works, because it's not what everybody else is doing,
Exactly,
so
right.
Fight for your ideas, you guys.
It's so true. I love that. I did not know that story. That's amazing. I look at that going, it's brilliant. But every brilliant idea usually is rejected at first, right? So I love that. So based on the title, We Should All Be Millionaires, based on the content of your book, we got to talk about money, because my gosh, you do such a good job of peeling back the process, because, one of the first things you talk about is our mindsets, but also what are the questions we're asking ourselves? What are we saying about money, right? Like, some people might hear that we should all be millionaires and go, yes, right? And some people go, I don't know.
Yes.
Right. So like, I love, some of the self-talk and being aware of even that, that person that's saying, well, I'm making healthy 6 figures right now. Why should I want more? Is it greedy to want to be a
Yeah.
millionaire? Is it greedy to want to build wealth? So like, let's go after that for just a second, because I think those are not necessarily things say people necessarily verbalize to their friends over coffee, like, yeah, it's stupid to become a millionaire, but
Yes.
I do think that that is something that people wrestle with a little bit, just because, we talk about dreaming big. Sometimes that big dream is a little bit of, well, who am I? Or it would be easy to
Mhm.
poo-poo that dream because it's a little scary. So let's talk about that. Why build wealth? And
Yeah.
when does it cross the line of being greedy or those kinds
Yeah.
of things? When you're helping people with that, how do you help them?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. $1 million
Yeah.
is not $1 billion.
Right.
I think we have opinions about
Yep.
billionaires, and I'm like, okay, cool, but $1 million is a far cry
Right.
from billionaire status. All right.
Absolutely.
So that's a completely different thing. Where you have the money to solve world problems, then yes, you should be solving world problems. I 100% agree with that. And I think
Yep.
when you have $1 million, you have enough to take care of yourself, but also to take care of your family, and
Yep.
also to take care of some of the world's problems, right? Be able
Yep.
to contribute to those causes that really matter to you. So I want us to be bigger players in that and be
Yep.
able to do that. And it needs to be people who, have different life experience, someone who has a disability, someone who is a member of the queer community, right? Like people who have different life experiences, who can see things that maybe I don't see or you don't see that
Yep.
are an issue, and put their money towards solving it,
Yep.
so more of us need to have money, and especially as women as well. And so I think we should make money because we have the ability to make money, and because
Yep.
it's a powerful tool that we can use to make change in the world. I also think that there is this idea that it's moral somehow to be poor. Like it's
Yeah.
moral to be broke, it's moral to struggle, it's moral to not have financial wealth. And I think that that is complete and utter nonsense,
Yep.
right? Like there are immoral poor people and there are immoral rich people, and it
Exactly.
doesn't, money in and of itself doesn't make you moral or immoral, right?
Yep.
Like there's this sort of like nobility to not having a lot. And I'm like, well, listen, when you can't feed yourself, like that doesn't, it doesn't, you don't care about the nobility, you're just
Exactly.
trying to solve that problem.
That's right.
It's
You are
very stressful.
surviving. Exactly.
Exactly. And so, I think we need to earn more money, especially if we're in a position to do so, right? There may be
Yep.
people in the world who really, it's much harder. They don't have the tools available. They have, more difficult governments that they're living under or whatever. So if
Right.
we have the ability, let's do it, and let's make a way for that person, right?
So true.
So that I think it's a bigger issue than just us. It's about our full community and doing good work in the world. And hey, I don't have a problem with enjoying life. Like as
Right.
you said, I don't need to live on a 50-acre ranch, right? But I
Right.
do because I want to. And
Yep.
this ranch provides experiences, right, for
Right.
people. And there's good things that we can do even just by owning a ranch, right?
Yep.
Like we hosted a photographer friend, and she was able to like do a photo shoot day, or friends who train horses who were able to have come in and do an event. Like we are able to contribute, right, to
Yep.
the world, just with the ranch alone. So I think
Right.
if you want to spend money on yourself, do it. And also, have so much that you can do for yourself and you can do for others.
Absolutely. And I know you are doing so many different things to help so many different communities, different people that are underrepresented, all of that, which I love. And I know that that's a big part of your why as well,
Yes.
which I think is so
Yeah.
powerful.
But
So
I do want to say one thing. I
yeah.
think if you are, if you're not basically a straight white guy, right? That and you're making a lot of money, that alone is revolutionary.
Right.
If you are a woman of color who is making your own money and making a lot of it, and you're like the little girl next door to you sees you doing that, right? Like that makes it so that little girl can dream, and that little girl can say, oh, if she could do it, I could probably do it, right? So that even if you are just visibly making money
Right.
as someone who is a diverse person, a historically and systemically marginalized person, that alone is revolutionary, even if you do nothing with it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think it is about being an example. And you're the
Yes.
first person I know, I'm the first person to not say, hey, we're the perfect example of everything. But it's like you're doing your best to really create that thing that people can aspire to. I even loved in the book, you talk about having your picture on the cover, right? Like
Yes.
part of that, I don't know if people would say that's vain, but I love for you. It's like, no, like you want little girls to walk into the library or a bookstore, especially little
Yes.
girls of color, and see, oh my gosh, there's somebody that looks like me that's talking about being a millionaire. That's possible. Like, I love that
Yes.
everything that you're doing is trying to then inspire. It's a little bit like we talked about before, trying to inspire those examples, right? Plant those seeds
Yes.
of possibility within those where it might not be the norm. So
Yes.
I love
Yes,
that.
and let's get past like the ego part of it, right? Because trust me,
Right.
there's a part of me that's like, why did I put my face on this cover? All these people are gonna know me now. Dear God.
Right. I just
I
want to
want
go to
to
the
hide.
grocery store. Yeah.
You know, and I definitely have that moment, or even stories that I've told in the book. I was all like a vulnerability hangover for like all the
Yeah.
stuff that I've told. But I think sometimes we have to get past our own ego or get past this
Yep.
idea that other people will see us as vain or other people won't like us if we have money, and just be focused on what is the real point of it.
Yep.
Why are you doing it? Be in touch with why you're doing it. Don't worry about other people's opinions, because trust me, they're going to have many. Some people
Yep.
will think you're the best thing that ever happened since sliced bread, and other people will hate your guts for the exact same thing. You know what
Exactly.
I mean? Like,
Exactly right. Well, and it's kind of one of those where it's like when you try to manage other people's expectations, it's exhausting and it keeps you limited. So yeah,
right.
you're right. You're going to tick people off for different reasons. People are going to be offended for different reasons. So why not become wealthy? I mean, if that ticks somebody off, so be it. They were probably going
Oh,
to be
well.
ticked about something else.
Exactly. They would have just found something else. Your nose. I
Exactly
don't like
right.
your nose. Whatever.
Exactly right. I love it. I love it. So, with Dream, Think, Do, we're always talking about dreaming bigger, thinking better, and doing more. And there's so many different aspects of that in your book. It's like you wrote it for us. So I'm so appreciative of that. But I do think when it comes to money, a big part, right? That one of the biggest components is the thinking component.
Yes.
Like how are we thinking? And you speak specifically to this, like when we start to think or aspire to be a millionaire, it really has to start with thinking and living
Yes.
like a millionaire. We're not talking about going out and leasing a Maserati, but it's that, how do you get into the mindset of a millionaire before you're a millionaire? So let's talk about that, because you give some great steps in the book. Let's give some people some tools as they're saying, all right, you know what? I do want to build wealth. I do want to have an impact on my community, my family, those around me, those people that they want to inspire and be an example for. Let's help them start to get in that mindset. What are some of the steps? Where do they start?
Yes. Well, it starts with having $1,000,000 thoughts, right? Like that
Yeah.
is the first chapter of the book is called $1,000,000 Story. And it's about changing the stories that are playing in our heads all the time,
Yeah.
right? And they could be for societal reasons, messages that we're receiving all the time. And it also could be for just whatever thoughts that we have about ourselves, where we think we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not good with money, we don't trust ourselves with money.
Yep.
I mean, we have so many stories. And I used to be the meanest girl to myself in my head. And I started practicing this, like using this guide to thought work that I give everybody in the book, that like really is about just retraining your brain to speak kindly to yourself and to remember like what you do have, the assets you do have, the skills that you do have, right? Your inherent value. Because I think we sometimes forget, like we think, oh, money is going to make me valuable, or this degree is going to make me valuable, or like after I achieve X, Y, and Z, I'll be valuable. And then you achieve X, Y, and Z, and you're still not valuable to yourself, and you still got to achieve X, Y, Z more, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so it's just reminding yourself of your inherent value that you have to add to the world, you know, and changing your thoughts to really think that way on a regular basis and do that thought work. And I'm not saying like you can just think pretty thoughts and then sexism goes away, or you think pretty thoughts and racism goes away. It's not, that is not the case, but you can take control of your own opinion of yourself, and really start to shift your thinking, right? So like if you feel like, well, I'm in debt and I'll never get out of debt, so like what's the point of even trying? How about we change that thought to I'm in debt and I know I can get out of this, and I know I can change this. It's possible. Other people have done it. I can do it too. Right. So like just exposing yourself to the possibilities and learning how to speak to yourself differently. It starts with that. That's step number one.
And I love that. And I loved even the simplicity of the difference between but and. I'm like, what? I think it's a great strategy. I mean, you were talking about the different examples, like my kid wants to go to camp. I want to send my kid to camp, but I have debt. It's like, wait, I want to send my kid to camp and I've got debt. How should I figure that out? Like, I love that. It's such a simple thing. And it is amazing how powerful our brains are, but it's one of those that we have to direct our thinking. If our brain is controlling the thinking, if we're not intentional with that, we're going to stay wherever we are. But just that little shift, so subtle, but so powerful. I love it. What are a couple other tools?
Possibilities.
Yeah, it's right. Like exactly right. And then your brain is constantly searching for solutions as opposed to just giving up. Like, yep, so as good as we can get, to say, no, what are the solutions? And we are infinitely creative, especially if we expect that. So I love it. What else? What else? Like, what are a couple of the other examples or tools when it comes to making that shift? If you're experiencing debt, maybe you got some big student loans, maybe you made some decisions with credit cards, whatever, and you're feeling that weight. But it's like, I want to believe for something bigger. I want to believe for something better. What else when it comes to shifting and starting to think and act like a millionaire?
Yeah. So, one of the exercises that I recommend people do in this chapter, it's called $1,000,000 Vision.
Yeah.
And it's all about figuring out what is your vision? What are your desires? What do you actually want? What are you drawn to? And allowing that to show you and point you to what you want, even things that you're jealous of, right? Like some of the things I have today, other people had them and I was jealous. And that jealousy was like, okay, well, that's what you want. So what you going to do about it?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, how are you going to work for it? How are you going to make it happen? And so I think it's important to actually get clear on what is your vision for like whatever the next chapter of your life. What is something that you really crave right now?
Yeah.
I think we are so fueled by the things that we want, the things that we crave. And this doesn't have to be material possessions. It could be a lifestyle change you want to make. It could be travel you want to do. It could be, for me, one of the things was being able to take care of my mom. She was stressed out. She lost her job and she's older. And I was like, I just want to be able to take care of that, So, putting together that list of like, here are the things that I want, and then what I encourage people to do is actually run the numbers on that.
Yeah.
So like, what does it actually cost to live in that neighborhood? What does it actually cost to pay your mother's rent? What does it cost to go travel with your kids and give them those experiences? What does it cost to like, if you want to invest or save, or pay off debt, what does that look like? What contribution do you need to be making on a monthly basis? Right. So getting clear on that number. And when I first did this, that number for me was 300,000 a year or 350 a year, approximately, right? $30,000 a month. And at the time I was making like under $10,000 a month. Right. And so I'm like, okay, $20,000 a month. What could I do? Let me brainstorm some ideas about how I can make that happen. It opens up possibilities when you actually run the numbers. Because I think sometimes we think like, oh, that's a $10 million lifestyle. That's so far from me. And if you actually do the numbers, it's like, actually, it's not quite that far, right?
Exactly.
Like, yes, there's a gap
break
here.
It down. Yeah. If you break it down to those manageable chunks, then and that's what I love. We're a dream, think, do. Sometimes people hear dream, think, do, and they think airy, fairy, rainbows and butterflies, but we're all about like hashtag real talk. It's like, let's break it down. How do you actually do it? And I love, you've got the vision aspect. Like, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to experience? What do you want to have more of in your life? What do you want your kids to experience? What do you want your marriage or your relationships to be like? And to dream, but then to move into thinking and say, all right, not to limit yourself to say, oh, but that's too expensive, or, oh, we never afford that. It's like, no, come up with a number and then to be able to think creatively. That's why so many people that listen to Dream, Think, Do are either full-time entrepreneurs or they've got side hustles because they love the idea of being able to, hey, if I want to do something, I'll go make some extra money to do it, or I'll create a business to make that happen, that kind of thing. And I think it's so powerful. Honestly, that full transparency, my wife and I were talking, she devoured the book and she's like, we talk about dreaming a lot, but I think the next level of dreaming, we're kind of moving into a new season of empty nesting and all that kind of stuff, which is wild. And she's like, I think we need to do another round like this. And I'm like, dang right, let's do it. So I think we're going to do a weekend away. We're going to take the book and dive into some of this. So I love it.
I love that. I think that's exactly what happened for me, right? Like that 300,000 or 350 that I wanted to make, it took me a year or two and I made it happen. And then I was able to buy the home that I wanted for my kids. I was able to do the things that I wanted to do. And then I was like, okay, now what's next, right? It's like a Roadrunner moment. And then you do it again and you create that next level of your vision, right?
Right.
Because my vision when I first started my career was like, if I could work from home and make $41,000 a year, which was like the replacement for my previous salary, and be able to like get decent health insurance, like that is my dream currently, right? And then you achieve that dream, and then you're like, okay, what's next, right? And then you go after that next thing, and you just keep doing what feels impossible in this moment, but the reality is, it is not impossible.
Yep.
You can do it, and then you also have this history behind you of like, wow, I've done all those things. Clearly I could do this. Cause like what I'm trying to do right now is take Hello7 to become $100 million company. I want to prove that a company that maybe doesn't have investors, was bootstrapped, that's run by a Black woman, that's run by a mostly female team, can become $100 million business, you know? And so I'm like, that seems insane and impossible. I don't know how I will do it. But then I look back and I'm like, look at all the other impossible things that I've accomplished. Clearly this is possible,
right?
You know?
And I love it. And I love, you know, even in the book, you talk about how you've got to surround yourself. Like if you're going to grow something, you can't do it alone. You've got to surround yourself. And I see that you know, again, in my semi-stalking mode of your life, that's one thing that you have done is you have continued to surround yourself and you've said, hey, we're going to grow this thing and everybody's going to win. Like your clients are going to win, your team's going to win. And, you know, obviously you have done well with this. You've benefited financially, but you've spread that around. And I think that to me, like, you know, when you start poking around a little bit, it's like, I don't know if this person's really living by this strategy, but you like, you're doing an incredible job of letting that, you know, permeate and really come out of everything that you're doing. So I just say kudos to that. Now,
thank you.
Yeah. Now, before we hit record, I told you one of the other things that I appreciate about the book is that with every freaking chapter, it seems like you're throwing in, and here's 25 specific things you can do. Like literally most chapters have like, okay, you're reading this on Tuesday night. Here's at least 25 things you can do at 7 a.m. starting Wednesday, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some specifics, because I'm guessing you've got Dream Think Doers that are listening now saying, okay, you know what? You're right. I do need to start building wealth. I do need to start visioning and maybe even put some price tags to some of the things that I want to do and achieve. Now let's give them, as we're starting to wrap this up, and I don't want to wrap it up, but as we're starting to wrap it up, let's give them some tangible tools on things they could start doing tomorrow to really start to make this thing happen.
Yes. Okay. So 2 main things I want them to think about. Oh gosh, there's so many.
All right. Exactly. Like 35 things.
2, maybe 3. I know, right? 35 things real quick.
That's real quick. Yeah.
Speed round. Yes. Okay. So what I would start with is there's a chapter in here. Chapter 7 is called $1 Million Value. And it's about when you start brainstorming and thinking about how can I build wealth, like what does that actually look like? That is the chapter that starts to point you towards what are your opportunities for increasing your earning potential? Yep. And the main question of the chapter is how do you add value to the world? And that could come from life experience. It could come from things you were drawn to as a child. That is just like your natural gifts and abilities. It could come from professional experiences, right? So think about what is a gap you see in the marketplace or an opportunity that you have because you've done this for 10 years for, you know, inside a corporation. And now you can give your advice as a consultant to, you know, other companies that are doing it, right? So like really thinking about like take stock of your skill set, right? Take stock of your strengths, do an assessment or 2 or 3, right? And I name some in the book that like really help you to understand how do I add value in the world? It helps to build a ton of confidence, and it helps you to like be pointed to, here's my thing. This is my thing that I want to go all in on, or this is my thing that I want to start trying and experimenting with to see if I can make money doing it. So that's one of the most practical things that folks can do.
And I love how, you know, in the book and obviously in your world, you know, you can do this as an entrepreneur for sure, but you make plenty of examples or offer plenty of examples where you can do this as an employee. Maybe, you know, somebody that's listening to this going, you know, I don't want to be an entrepreneur, but it still helps you to take stock of the value that you bring, your passions, the things you want to learn. If you want to continue to work for an organization, like let's help you to know where, you know, what's your jam, right? Yeah. So you can do more of that and often get paid more to do it. So I love that. So that's taking stock of your value. What's another strategy?
Yes. So start making $1 million decisions instead of broke decisions, which we call BADs. So make $1 million decisions, right? And so thinking about like, how can I make decisions that create more abundance, that create more opportunity in my life, that point me towards more joy, you know, and peace and, abundance and options
Yep.
versus making decisions that cause us to shrink and contract and make our lives smaller and inconvenience us, which is what I think most personal finance gurus teach us. And I don't think that what they teach is necessarily complete wholesale, not valuable, but I think this piece is missing where, you don't become a millionaire by making lots and lots of like broke decisions where you're scared and therefore you're holding on to your money or you're holding on to your time or you're being very tight with it and never taking a risk. You actually build wealth by taking some risks and by opening yourself to opportunity and by investing in yourself, right?
Yep.
So, it could be as simple as the example I love to give because I feel like it's the gateway drug to like delegating and making more $1 million decisions is laundry, right? Especially when it comes to women, right? Like stop doing everybody's laundry. And first of all, don't even do your own. Use a drop-off service, drop it off, have it cleaned and come back to you folded. And you get like 6 hours of your life back from the weekend, right? When you're spending all day going in and out and sorting and doing all of that, you could be resting your brain, having time to think, having time to brainstorm and come up with creative ideas, right? And then on Monday, go back and ready to slay. And whether that's you work at a place and you want to pitch yourself to take on more responsibility, or if you want to start a side hustle, right? So like start getting some of those things off of your plate so you're not so bogged down. So you have time to do some creative thinking and really capitalize on the value that you have to add.
I think that's huge. And I mean, you're touching on something that I think is such a valuable subject in the book. We don't have as much time to talk about it today. So we're going to have you back. Like, I think we're going to have to do a 4-part series. I'm sorry. I'll talk to your team.
Do it.
I'll see what we can do. Right. But I do think I think that is one thing that you really dig into. And it's not just your feelings. You dive into research, data, history, on how there really are inequalities on how women have been treated and therefore how women think of themselves. And I think that so much of what you're talking about, really everybody needs to be exposed to at the very least, as men, we need to be made aware of, hey, wait, and it's funny because I would bring in my copy and show my wife and it's like, really? Like that's what she's like, yep. I'm like, okay. I walk back out like, wow. Okay. We're going to talk more about that.
Yes.
It's so important because so much of this is deep. It's like you said, you've said a number of times in the book, it's like, laws may change, but it takes a while for the culture to follow. It takes a lot longer for your thinking to change. And so this is an important thing. And you do a great job of having those conversations. And you and I had this conversation. I'm going to bring it up because hopefully it's okay. But before we hit record, I had a confession for you in that, you go after a lot of discussions around inequality and really wanting to be able to be an example for underrepresented people. And I told you before we hit the record button that I'm like, I was having a different kind of anxiousness. Like, one, you're super cool. So I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be your friend, all those things, right? Like, so that's pretty normal, but I'm like, no, this feels different. And then I realized like, wait, I'm worried about Rachel judging me because I'm a male, because I'm in my 50s. I got gray hair. And I'm like, well, that's kind of stupid. And I was like, wait, that's probably what she experiences. That's what she's talking about experiencing all the time. That's what so many people experience. And as a white, older male, I don't want to say old. Hopefully that's like, I'm just in my 50s. I mean, come on.
I don't think you're old.
That's right. But still, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, wow. Just even, the conversations you're having in the book and the conversations that you're having in the world. I think again, you're doing a great job of helping to draw these conversations out so people can have real conversations. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And also just honor you in that, because I think that, yes, we all should be millionaires, and you give plenty of tangible strategies, mindset, practical steps to do in the book. But I think you're also having a very, very important conversation that needs to be had as well on many other, even I would dare say more important subjects than being a millionaire and growing wealth. So I just wanted to take a second and honor you in that and say thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being open to hearing that message. I think that's why we need more diverse voices, writing books, hosting podcasts, doing all of these things. So that we can be having these conversations, because we need everybody needs to be a part of this fight for equality. It's not just Black people's fight. It's not just, women's fight. It's all of us need to be participating and realize how it actually disadvantages us as a society, right? To discount a whole group of people who have so much value to offer. So I'm glad that thank you for lending me your platform by having me on this podcast, and for reading the book and for caring.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And I think that's, I don't know about you, but I think as grown ass adults, mature people, like good people, that's who listens to Dream Think Do. We have so many awesome people that listen to Dream Think Do. And it's that whole thing of, around the hard topics, we need to just be able to have conversations as grown ass adults, being open. And that's why I love having people like you on. You're bringing wisdom, you're bringing heart. I love it. So I'm going to ask you one last question as we wrap this thing up, and I'm going to give you a second to think about it, although I bet you don't need a microsecond. But one question I want to ask is, when you think about growing wealth and living in this way, what's something you wish you would have known sooner? Okay. So think about that. I'm going to brag about you for a second. All right, guys, we have been talking with Rachel Rodgers. If you want to find out more about her, and you should, go to hello7.co. That's her website. She's doing amazing things. You're going to want to do a deep dive there. Just prepare yourself. You're going to lose an hour because she's got amazing content. And she's doing really cool things. The book we've been talking about is We Should All Be Millionaires, A Woman's Guide to Earning More, Building Wealth, and Gaining Economic Power. And it is for women, but dudes, read it too. It will help you out, and I think you'll enjoy it. And it'll also equip you to have better conversations with those around you as well. All right. So that's my little pitch for you. Rachel, what would you say? What do you wish? Yeah, absolutely. What do you wish you would have known earlier in regards to building wealth?
Yes. Well, I wish I would have known when I was younger that making money is easy, and not, I think we overcomplicate it. I think we think it's some far off distance thing that's only for certain types of people, but I actually think making money is pretty easy. And I hope that that's what people take away from this book.
I love that. And I think that is such an awareness, just even that shift. Now, that doesn't mean that you aren't working hard, because you are. Like, I know your lifestyle's like, you got plenty hours in the day and you're working hard, but you are also doing it in a way that is completely congruent with who you are, and doing it in a way that your family's benefiting from. And I think that is such a huge, huge epiphany. And it starts there, right? To go, because if you think it's just going to be a slog fest, not fun, another day, another dollar, then where's the adventure in that? But man, when you open yourself, it makes all the difference. You are the bomb. We love you. And hey, I'll look forward to having you back. I mean, if this is the first of a 4-part series, I can't wait to have the second conversation.
Let's do it. I'm down.
All right. You are awesome.
Thank you for having me.